he could end up being the best wide receiver in this draft. I wouldn't be shocked if the Chargers have him wide receiver 1 in 2023. And I do think that with the Chargers especially, if he's given a quarterback like Justin Herbert, his ascension could be very, very quick.
Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo to Bolt fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, with the 21st pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Chargers have selected Quentin Johnston, wide receiver out of TCU. First off, let me point out that the Chargers, we've had some, I would say, pretty good players come to this team via TCU, right? Jason Verrett, of course, that man back there, LaDainian Tomlinson. I like that already. I like these odds, right? But to follow that up, I wanted to ask you guys, how we feeling, Bolt fam? Because honestly, if I'm being truthful with you guys, let's say, okay, first off, we had about 3,000 people in the chat last night. It was nuts, guys. Thank you so much for all the support. We're coming right back later today with rounds 2 and 3. But if I'm being completely honest with you guys, I was a little thrown off by the response that we saw from a lot of the Chargers fans last night. Not a lot of love for Quentin Johnston in the first round. And I got to tell you guys, it bummed me out just a little bit, but I'm here to kind of help maybe navigate the Bolt fam a little bit in terms of what this pick looks like. Now, I'm not trying to change anybody's mind. You guys can love the pick, hate the pick. That is up to you, but I want to point out exactly what my feelings are on it, and hopefully maybe some people might feel the same, because honestly, and this is well before even finding out Quentin was the selection for the Chargers. Quentin was definitely one of those guys that I didn't think would even fall to the Chargers at pick 21, and to see him there, definitely very exciting. I understand maybe the other players that were still available on the board may have watered down the experience a little bit, but trust you me, this is an awesome pick for the Chargers, and we're going to lay that out in today's video on why Quentin Johnston is a great pick for LA. Before we do get started, guys, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. If you guys want to join the best fantasy platform on the web, make sure to hit up Underdog. Use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100. Definitely a good time there. Now, before we get into this reaction and dissection of Quentin Johnston, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this, baby. Lights, camera, action. Why Quentin Johnston is a great pick for the Los Angeles Chargers. And again, we're not trying to change anybody's minds out here. We're just trying to offer some perspective, okay? Quentin Johnston, first off, welcome to the LA Chargers. I think regardless of people's opinions on the value of the pick, or, you know, if they had different ideas at pick 21, I think we can all stand and support Quentin Johnston and hope for the best in terms of his growth in the pros. I think his ceiling is remarkably high. I think the Chargers know that, and he absolutely is going to make a difference in his first year in the NFL. Again, trust me, you guys, I really do feel like this addition to this wide receiver core is going to transform what this offense is going to look like. And we're going to get into that here in just a second. But I wanted to do something a little bit different in today's video that I don't think I've ever done before, okay? And that's going to be looking back, okay? Because I feel like maybe there's a little bit more credibility in listening to how I dissected this player, on how I viewed Quentin Johnston before knowing he was going to be the pick at 21. I think that'll help offer a lot of maybe unbiased perspective on the player. And then afterwards, we're going to continue to further expand on that, right? We're going to do a little Mythbusters segment on maybe debunking or actually saying it's true with some of the things we're hearing about Quentin Johnston afterwards. So we're going to take a quick look at the past, a dive into the past, a video that I put out maybe a month ago. I'm going to share with you guys a very important segment from that video in which I viewed Quentin Johnston as such a good fit, such a good player, that I was willing to even trade up to go get him. And that was the only way back then that I felt we would even have a shot at landing Quentin Johnston. So without further ado, we're going to take a little view blast from the past as to what my perspective was on Quentin Johnston just 30 days ago. This section is called the trade up. The trade up. The Chargers could shock everybody in pursuing a name that maybe they have higher on their boards than a lot of us believe. Now, you guys probably see his name at the top of the board here, Quentin Johnston. What if the Chargers, who have been hinting towards needing a bit more speed on this team, finding weapons specifically tailored to Justin Herbert's strengths, of course, talking about that big arm and getting very serious about building a brand new offense for brand new coordinator, Kellen Moore with the Los Angeles Chargers. What if all of those factors added up to the Chargers circling, highlighting, bolding the name Quentin Johnston on their draft board? And what if going into the draft, and this is very much so possible as well, these names were drafted in front of Quentin Johnston, like a Jackson Smith-Njigba, who's definitely starting to climb boards because of that nice performance at the Combine or his pro day. You got Bijan Robinson, that sensation at running back. What if because all of that, we still have a Quentin Johnston left on the board at pick 17, but with players or teams like the Detroit Lions, who are wide receiver needy coming up, the Chargers don't feel like he could fall even further than that. What if the Chargers get aggressive? They say, hey, Quentin Johnston has turned out to be our guy. Let's trade up and go get him for Justin Herbert. Now, let me talk a little bit about why Quentin Johnston might actually end up being worth it. Some people believe that Quentin Johnston could be the #1 wide receiver coming out of this class. He could have the highest. I do think he does have the highest upside of all the wide receivers you'll find in the first round. But in terms of what he's offering you, there's not very many other talent, if any other talent in the NFL draft at his level that's going to be offering it, okay? Now, if you take a look here at PFF, the biggest thing that I want to point out is actually down here at the bottom line. The bottom line is it's all there. Johnston has every coachable physical tool. He's projected early in the first round. What that means is that Johnston, this is kind of the dude, right? He has the physical traits that remind people of, let's say, a Julio Jones, right? Or an A.J. Brown or a DK Metcalf. Those big physical receivers that tend to dominate in the NFL. That is your prototypical 6'3", 208-pound Quentin Johnston carries those traits, right? Now, what's funny is that physicality is kind of listed as one of those things that maybe he can improve on, and that's in terms of contested catches, trying to get his body involved a little bit more into his play. But I don't know if that's necessary for him to succeed at the next level. I think he could definitely do it, and I think he's shown proof of that, previous his 2022 campaign. So I don't think it's non-existent, but at the same time, what his role would be with the Chargers is definitely interesting. He would be our speed option, which is awesome. A 6'3", right, 200-pound wide receiver being your speed option is a very good thing. He'd likely be playing opposite Mike Williams on the outside. That would allow a Keenan Allen to dominate from the slot for the majority of his snaps. That looks really good on paper for the Chargers. Now, what happens if a Quentin Johnston all of a sudden starts clicking with a quarterback like Justin Herbert? It completely changes what the defense is going to look like pretty much for the rest of the year. If you got a Quentin Johnston on the field that's both tall, maybe can be physical, but it's also very explosive, can stretch the field. Defenses can't play as close to the line of scrimmage as they've been playing since 2022. Justin Herbert could easily find this guy open in deep part of the fields that other quarterbacks couldn't access. They just don't have the arm. And then finally having that speed that can access that part of the field all equates to a very dangerous addition to this offense. One addition that could certainly change everything for the Chargers and what they look at, what they face on defense from their opponents. Quentin Johnston could end up being that guy for the Chargers because of how much he truly affects the Chargers offense and what they can do offensively. You guys remember the Justin Herbert rookie season with Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton, of course. Justin Herbert, for whatever reason, was able to find one, if not both of these guys open for very many games throughout his rookie campaign, and that really threw defenses off. How many 20-yard plus touchdowns did we see to that duo? Quite a few. That kind of changed after his rookie year. I don't know if it's because we got rid of Tyron Johnson, if we didn't have those two options, if the talent wasn't there, if Jalen Guyton regressed. We don't know. Jalen Guyton doesn't seem like to be the problem. It just seems to be the Chargers not moving in that direction of utilizing the deep pass with Justin Herbert. And if so, trying to utilize it, not having the weapons to really effectively execute it. Quentin Johnston would change that. So the reason I'm highlighting a Quentin Johnston here is because, again,
he could end up being the best wide receiver in this draft. I wouldn't be shocked if the Chargers have him wide receiver 1 in 2023, especially with what he offers you physically. Just like PFF said down here, has every uncoachable physical tool. If I said coachable before, uncoachable physical tool. He could turn out to be wide receiver 1-1. And I do think that with the Chargers especially, if he's given a quarterback like Justin Herbert, his ascension could be very, very quick. It also gives you options at wide receiver going forward into the future. Let's say if things get complicated in 2024 and beyond. So Quentin Johnston, you guys let me know if you're okay with that trade. Very, very big trade for the Chargers. It would be a blockbuster trade. It would probably be a name that not a lot of Chargers fans would be like, what? We traded up for a wide receiver? That's crazy. That doesn't seem, like the Chargers, especially with some of the talent left on the board. Maybe some people would expect the Chargers to go after let's actually pause this real quick, or in and around that pick, a Nolan Smith or a Dalton Kincaid, right? But instead they go for what they perceive as the best wide receiver in the draft because that's what they think they need. They need speed. They need that element to the Kellen Moore offense to help execute with Justin Herbert.
So what did you guys think? Kind of crazy. Some of the things that this happens every season, right? I think we put out so many videos that obviously we're going to get some things correct, but some of the things in that video in terms of details were kind of crazy, right? JSN going right before. You had Bijan Robinson before the Chargers. And then also maybe some people a little bit upset in terms of the selection because of who else was available. We specifically mentioned Nolan Smith and Dalton Kincaid, who were available to the Chargers there. So kind of crazy, but that was what my perspective was a month ago, before we had any idea that he was going to be a Charger. What do you guys feel now, right? We can keep updating the comments as we continue on. How do you guys feel now with that perspective being shared? Now, to further expand on this, I wanted to go into a Mythbusters segment, okay? Now that Quentin Johnston's officially on the team, we have more information, we have more, let's say, time to think about how he's going to mesh with this unit. What are some of the things that I wanted to point out, especially in terms of what I've been hearing online, right? I've been reading a lot of comments. I literally was up way too late last night just reading everybody's reactions, trying to gather how my rebuttal was going to sound coming in here the next day. So here, let's start this Mythbusters segment off with this first statement here, okay? And again, we're gonna read off something that I've heard, and I'll let you guys know if this is something I do believe is true or false. And there's a diverse list of answers here. The first thing I've heard is Johnston is not fast. Bolt fam, I got to tell you, this is simply false, okay? First off, Quentin Johnston did not run at the combine, all right? That is something that we don't have any data or information from, and that's really where you're going to find the most accurate compilation of numbers regarding his game, if you want to measure it that way. He did, however, participate at his pro day, and that can be a little bit sketchier, right, in terms of precise timing. At his pro day, they did measure him running a 4.5 flat, which is pretty underwhelming. And honestly, it was something that I think I even didn't know that last night going into the draft, what his pro day time was, because I just assumed that this guy would be it just barely, a sub 4.4 player. Now, that didn't end up being the case. And honestly, I think more realistically, I expected him to at least be like a 4.45 kind of guy, right? But a more accurate examination at his pro day times does put him more around a 4.46 to somewhere between that and maybe a 4.49. Okay, so we're going to say somewhere in the late 4.4s is where you can expect the honest and true time of a Quentin Johnston. And that already, guys, tells me that this is something that the Chargers had in mind all along. That is speed. Sure, it's not sub 4.3 like we've seen in years past. Sure, it's not sub 4.4 like a lot of us were hoping to see, which is still very possible in this draft, mind you. I do think the Chargers still have an opportunity to go out there and get a guy that's sub 4.3 or sub 4.4. But it is something that the Chargers absolutely do not have right now on offense in terms of a player that can be used this exclusively, right? If anything, I want the Bolt fam to trust their eyes, okay? You take a look at this guy's tape or even his highlights, right? His speed definitely looked sub 4.4 to me, at least. And that was on a bad day. This dude was a burner, man. That was like basically the part of the field that he lived in, was in that deep part of the field. He thrived there due to his speed and physical attributes. Now, I will say that I think a 4.45 to 4.4 or somewhere around there is more accurate, because I do agree that his acceleration is the problem there, right? That's why we're not seeing a higher score in terms of his 40. He does take a second, let's say, to rev up. But once he does, this dude is a blazer. In his game versus Michigan, this guy was measured having reached 21 miles per hour. I think that if you were to translate that to the 40 time, that is sub 4.4, maybe just on the nose of it. And that was on a grab-and-go house call. That was part of his game, right? That is why you bought into a Quentin Johnston. It's not because the guy can go out there and run a sub 4.4. It is because of the speed he brings at all levels of the field, right? It sure takes him just a second to get up there, but that is why this is going to be your speed option for Justin Herbert and the Chargers this season. Johnston is a deep threat, and he is definitely not slow. So we're going to bust that myth right here, all right? Next up, the next thing I'm kind of hearing. There was better value on the board, okay? And to that, I'm going to say that's kind of true, all right? I'm going to go ahead and agree with you guys there. There was better value on the board in terms of players still available to the Chargers at pick 21. And I do think if the Chargers may have found themselves a little bit more flexible, they may have not selected a wide receiver until, let's say, round 2 or 3. But that would have given them a player like a Nolan Smith or a Myles Murphy, who I think a lot of us saw the value in that edge position with those particular players at pick 21. A lot of us were absolutely gobsmacked that those guys were still available. I'm also gobsmacked that whoever put this graphic together still has us as San Diego. Either way. Where Chargers fans are finding themselves most hung up is who was still on the board, and I totally get that. It's understandable, okay? And again, I too will admit I probably would have drafted Murphy here. I think I'm also a very big Nolan believer. But I need to also highlight that this doesn't make this a bad pick at all, right? The Chargers, they stuck to their guns. How long did we hear that the Chargers were indeed going to invest an early pick at the position of wide receiver? And how many times did we hear Tom Telesco and even Brandon Staley say that this team needs some speed? They needed a wide receiver. They needed speed. They got both in Quentin Johnston. So in the end, let's say you told me that Johnston would have been our pick at the top of the draft, right? Somebody came up to me and was like, hey, director, just so you know, I kind of got the ins on what's going on in the draft. It's going to be Quentin Johnston to the Chargers. I probably would have looked over my shoulder and been like, no way. Like, oh, like the hype would have been very real, I think, for a lot of us, right? But seeing the other players on the board, I will say it did take the wind out of our sails just a little bit. But I don't want that to distract you guys from thinking this is a bad pick. This is a good pick. Could it have been a more valuable pick if we went with, let's say, a Nolan Smith, Myles Murphy? Some people even are higher on like Dalton Kincaid or even one of the other receivers like Jordan Addison, which I actually don't agree with. I think that Quentin Johnston, in terms of what the Chargers need, was the next best thing. And that's hard for me to admit because I've been a big Zay Flowers believer. But after this pick, it really became obvious to me why Quentin Johnston was the selection all along. Okay, and I'll share that here in just a minute. So that myth, I will say it's true. Chargers fans, you do have a reason to maybe feel the way you feel in terms of value, but it doesn't make this a bad pick at all, okay? Next up, I'm hearing Johnston can't catch or get open. And to that, I'm going to say that is mostly false. I can't completely, say that there isn't issues there, but I think it's being blown out of proportion, okay? Because again, there's a narrative that he's kind of a one-trick pony, right? Run fast in one direction and try and burn somebody deep, right? And he also kind of has a reputation, in quotations, of having a lot of drops, right? Again, I think this is a bit overblown. First off, yes, I will say that he had 8 drops last season. That's not great. And for a Chargers team that already has a little bit of issues in terms of, coming up with those catches, trying to improve those drop rates, that is a little bit concerning. But that is something that's absolutely very, very coachable. It's not a defining trait. You guys remember in 2021, Keenan Allen? I know we all have a lot of short memories here, but Keenan Allen had 9 drops that season in 2021. 9. And it was a really big problem for the Chargers. But what did he do? He followed it up with a 0 drop stat in 2022. 0 drops, from 9 to 0. That is not a defining trait of a player. And if you take a look, I wasn't able to find the history of the drops of Johnston just readily available. But I do know that his catch rate has been improving dramatically, right? I think it went from something like 40% all the way up to 60% over the last 3 years at TCU. And that's good. That shows growth. And that is why Johnston has the highest ceiling of the receivers in this class, because he has shown improvement. There are concerns, but improvement has been made. And now he's going to be working in an environment where he has access to Mike Williams. to help him out immensely. That's another big thing. People were like, he may be tall and he may be fast, but he's not very good in contested catch situations. First off, I kind of disagree with that. I think that if you look at his immediate tape from last season, yeah, he did struggle a little bit, but Duggan certainly wasn't doing him any favors. But if you look at his year previous, you did see a lot of that. And that does give me evidence that it exists. Now having time to work with Mike Williams, I feel like that contested catch rate is going to go up, and I think catching overall is going to go up in working with the pair of wide receivers we have in LA already. Now, as for getting open, right, that is something that we noticed as well. He could use some work there, right? And that's why I say this is mostly false, because yes, he can improve, but it's not like he's completely, one-dimensional out there. Johnston can work every part of the field pretty instantly, right? You throw him onto the field right now, game 1, week 1 with the Chargers, he's going to have some footwork. He's going to have something to offer at all levels, right? He gets the ball in his hands. He can go pretty much the distance at any point in any given game, right? But he does need help expanding his route tree a little bit. And working with Keenan Allen, I think is pretty obvious. That's going to do wonders for his game too. His route running, his separation. That is the guy you want to talk to. There's a very few guys in the NFL that I think could honestly make a big difference in these rookies. Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams, those kind of, maybe Cooper Kupp, right? These kind of guys I do think can make a big difference in these new rookies coming into the league. And again, this is why Johnston has widely been considered the highest ceiling wide receiver this year. Because with those measurables, right? With that speed, that size, he can turn into a monster with proper development. And with Keenan and Mike, and of course Justin Herbert, we can't forget that, he is in as good of a situation as he could have hoped for. So yes, I will say it's mostly false that Johnston can't, get open or catch. He does have things he needs to work on, but my goodness, is he need an awesome environment to improve on those stats. Now, finally, and this is probably one of the more outlandish ones that I read, but I saw it a few times last night. I heard the quote that Johnston doesn't fit on our roster. Okay. This is kind of where it irked me a little bit. I read somebody say specifically that we shouldn't be getting all excited about drafting our wide receiver 4. And to that, I got to tell you guys, this is laughably false, okay? The Chargers' plan for Johnston is pretty obvious and immediate, at least in my eyes, right? And it also reflects future sight, composition for the position of wide receiver. But let's go ahead and take a look at the immediate roster of wide receivers, okay? You see that the Chargers were likely aggressively pursuing another perimeter receiver in this draft. Because as much as we all love Flowers, and this is something I've come to admit, because I always felt that Flowers was the best fit. And then once we selected Johnston, I was like, I think I'm an idiot. I don't think he was the best fit. I think it was this guy all along. Because as much as we all love Flowers, Flowers is primarily a slot guy. And I don't think the Chargers want that. I don't think they want that at all. They want to reserve that role for Keenan Allen because he is a monster in that role. We know what we have in Keenan Allen. We have a slot receiver. We don't want to dip into that into those snaps too much. I do think Johnston's going to get some opportunity in the slot, but primarily he's going to be playing on the perimeter. And that's why instead I think the Chargers, they needed to get a big body that can work on the outside and stretch the field. He has a couple of roles. There's a couple of roles that the Chargers needed fulfilled in this one. And Johnston does exactly that. I feel like Johnston was always the best fit for this role, even if not a lot of us saw it coming. I think I kind of stumbled on it a little bit early, and then I felt that maybe he wouldn't be available, etc., etc. But this is a heck of a fit, and a heck of an opportunity in terms of fit for the player and the team in the first round. Not only do they have a guy who instantly slides into that wide receiver 2 role, if you guys want the role in our roster, he's going to be our wide receiver 2, playing opposite of Mike Williams, but he also offers the exact traits that this offense needed. Speed, size, and monster yak ability, dudes. That is one huge thing that he's bringing to the table that the Chargers just do not have at the wide receiver position. We kind of have it with Gerald Everett, but my God, we need to get Justin Herbert some help out there. We need a guy that can, once you get the ball in his hand, has the ability to take it all the way to the house. We have to get a guy that you can play a little bit more flexibly. You can play a Johnston a little bit like a Deebo Samuel. Those plays that the Chargers, for whatever reason, have been so stubborn and trying, even back in the Joe show days, right? We just didn't have the players to execute on that. Johnston is that kind of player. Even with that size, he's a freak. That speed, it's very noticeable. And the Chargers can finally start executing on things like that. So this season, you're going to see a lot of Mike Williams and Quentin Johnston on the outside, with Keenan Allen in the slot.
And occasionally, I think we're going to see, Palmer and Guyton kind of sprinkled in there. But this is our trio. This is the identity of the Chargers wide receivers now. And that makes for an extremely intimidating wide receiver core for all defenses that we're going to face this season. All these guys potentially could be viewed as wide receiver ones at some point. And having that kind of talent, all playing different, unique roles, that makes for a very complete looking unit. That's awesome. That's very cool. So to wrap this up, Bolt fam, I will say that I was a little bummed to see the initial reaction of the Chargers fandom. I was hoping maybe it was partially my fault. Maybe we made too much of the value in grabbing an edge in the first round. Maybe we hyped up other players like Dalton Kincaid and Bijan Robinson. But in the end, this was an awesome pick for the Chargers in my perspective. It's a player that fits the team, fits their needs, and honestly fits their identity going forward. Because let's not forget, the Chargers, they have 2 wide receivers that they have to pay a combined over $60 million next season. Johnston kind of adds a little bit of flexibility to that formula. That doesn't mean I want to get rid of Keenan or Mike. Absolutely not. But it offers you options in which if the Chargers do need to make some tough decisions in order to save some money, at least they got a big body guy like, Quentin Johnston that they can continue building around and keep that wide receiver core strong. So you guys let me know what you think in the comments section below. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. Make sure to hit us up tonight. We'll be back for rounds 2 to 3. You guys also let me know who you're hoping to see in the second and third round. I got to tell you guys just off the top of my head who I would love the Chargers maybe to have slide to them. I want an edge. I think edge is the logical option here, the logical decision, but I would be super happy with Luke Musgrave. He was in our most recent mock draft. That would be awesome. You guys let me know what you're thinking in the comment section below. Well, guys, we'll catch you next time. As always, bolt up, stay frosty. Quentin Johnston, welcome to Los Angeles.